Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the shop. I thought today we would explore a question that has been eating at my brain ever since Biden took office. And the question is, can America survive 4 years of a Biden administration? I mean, we're a little over 1 year in now, and you guys see how far we've fallen, how fast we've fallen. Can the country survive until 2024 when there's a possibility to get rid of this communist that's in this authoritarian that's taken office, that's in power right now, that has taken control of the entire bureaucracy? I remember years ago listening to Rush Limbaugh, and he was criticized for saying that, I hope Obama fails. Well, I'm going to double down on what Rush said. We really need him now. I wish we had more voices like Rush Limbaugh, but you know, I'm going to say, I hope Biden fails. I hope all of his policies fail, because everything we've seen, from the wide open border, 2 million plus illegals coming in and being spread out in the cloak of darkness, they're spreading these people out all throughout the country. Crime has skyrocketed. It could be related to the fact that they're bringing in all of these people that are willing to break the law as soon as they come into the country. You know, that's the difference between legal immigration and illegal immigration, is these people that are doing it illegally are willing to break the law as soon as they step foot into the country. They're willing to do that. And of course, as you guys know, I said in 2019, Biden was rolling out the red carpet, and they already had, what do they call them, caravans and caravans of people stacking up to come in and flood our country with illegals. It's called, you know, there's a plan the UN developed. It has a name. It's called replacement migration. Go look it up. It's a real thing. I mean, they want to replace the people of the United States, me and you, with immigrants. And they don't care how they get them here, legally or illegally. In fact, I think they probably prefer illegally. And you know that we've just seen so many inconsistencies. You're not allowed to cross the Canadian border unless you have the V. But you can come over the southern border by the millions without the V, without any documentation. Many of these people are supposed to be coming back later on. They're having like ankle trackers and different things like that. And they're finding these things broken off, you know, a mile away or whatever. These people they didn't follow the first law of don't come into the country, don't cross this line unless you do it legally. So what makes you think that they're going to come back and show up for their hearing or whatever? You know, this is just complete lunacy. The people that are in control right now are clearly authoritarians. I was going to do a whole video. In fact, I did do a whole video about the Ministry of Truth. And that includes groups such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all these others that are suppressing creators' thoughts, banning and demonetizing people for having an opinion that differs from the mainstream media. That is dangerous. That's dangerous stuff, guys. I talked about it a little bit in the last video, but you know, a lot of this stuff you can't even criticize because it's illegal now. According to the Department of DHS a couple of days ago, they say that if you say certain things like questioning the 2020 election or questioning the COVID narrative, then you're a terrorist or you're promoting terrorism. Unbelievable. They're trying to destroy free speech. That's what this is. This is a straight frontal attack on our First Amendment. We have the right to free speech, a free press, all that. Well, you know, they don't like it much, but the press where you can actually get real truth are places like this, are places like, you know, I'm going to say Tim Pool. Even though Tim Pool, I would consider a classical liberal in that sense. He's not a conservative, I don't believe. But I like the guests that he has on. The other day he had Marjorie Taylor Greene and somebody else on, another congressman on. And I can't remember who he was, but it was a great conversation. These are the conversations they don't want us to hear. That's why they're going so hard after Joe Rogan and people like Joe Rogan. But this is just insanity on full display. This is the weaponization of political correctness. We all saw this. If you're an older person and you grew up in the 90s, I mean, you know, we used to have shows and stuff, the Bill Maher show, Politically Incorrect and things like that. The reason that show had that title was because that was a thing that was coming up in that time. Before the 90s, before the late 80s, early 90s, you never heard of political correctness. That's one of these words that the liberals made up to silence us, to take away free speech. We have the right to free speech. It doesn't say anything in the Constitution about, oh, these certain words are banned. Oh, you're not ever allowed to question an election, because if you do, you're promoting terrorism. And they're really reaching to try to connect anyone that questions any of the mainstream narrative, or more specifically, Biden's agenda and Biden's narrative, the Build Back Better plan, the New World Order, the Great Reset. Anyone that tries to question anything from that ideology is automatically deemed a wrong thinker. This stuff comes straight out of Orwell's book, 1984. I mean, they had the Ministry of Truth, where if, these are the people over here that get to decide what truth is, not you. Not what you read in black and white, not what you've studied from history, not what you even see with your own eyes. But yet, these people expect us to just wholeheartedly believe them when they've been lying to us about everything since 2019 or sooner. I mean, earlier than that. They've been lying for decades and decades, but the culmination of all these lies really has been exposed over the past year. Notice now that we're coming up to midterm elections, suddenly all the Democrats are backing off of all the COVID restrictions. Wonder why that is. Is it suddenly that they found a cure for COVID? It's called, hey, we're in trouble. Midterms are coming up. We're not going to be reelected if we continue on this path. I think that's part of it. Biden's poll numbers are in the basement, man. They're like below 40%. Even among his own people, he's got low approval numbers. I mean, way lower than Trump had at this time of his term, So unfreaking believable tyranny we've witnessed over this past year. And even before then, but I'm not allowed to talk about that because that doesn't jive with the mainstream media. So we're getting into very dangerous waters, guys, when they can control your speech by saying what you're allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say. The Ministry of Truth is the best analogy I can give for that, is these people are full-blown tyrants. I mean, unfreaking real what we've seen just over a year. How much inflation do you need to see before you realize Democrat policies are a complete failure? How much inflation do you need to see before you realize printing money into oblivion and sending Americans $1,200 checks and just mismanaging money in general, like our federal government does on a daily basis, is not the answer? We need responsible people in office, not clowns that are hell-bent on destroying everything that's great about the United States of America. I mean, look at the environmental stuff. There was a reason that Trump got us out of the Paris Accords, and of course Biden goes in and gets us right back in. I'm hearing this stuff here in my own state. We're an oil-rich state here where I live, and I'm hearing stuff from people that I work with that basically there's plenty of oil to be pumped. The problem is there are no investors. And we were talking in depth about it a couple of days ago about how this whole new thing that hardly anyone even knows about this deal, but I believe it's tied to the Paris Accord. It's this new thing called ESGs, environmental, social government. And it's basically this agreement that these financial institutions have made without us being in the conversation, without the guys, the blue collar people. We're not even considered in this equation. They have decided that, if it's a violation, if we say it's a dirty thing like oil, then that'll be brown. You won't be green. You'll get a brown label. So that'll hurt your reputation as a company. So in the future, it's sort of a social credit score for corporations, so that if they do wrongthink, or if they invest in companies that are deemed by the Ministry of Truth to be bad, then they'll get a negative score. And if they get too many negative scores, just like in China, they won't be allowed to do certain things like borrow money in the future and things like that. So part of the reason that the oil prices have shot up to $95 a barrel today is because Biden's just attack on oil. It's just an open attack on oil. And of course, he's trying to bring in all these electric vehicles and stuff. And when you really start investigating the electric vehicles, that electricity has to be produced somehow. Either coal plants, natural gas plants, nuclear energy, stuff like that. But it doesn't come free. But people think that just because it's an electric car, it must be better. It's not better. The lithium batteries that they mine the lithium that they mine to make these batteries to run these fancy electric cars are extremely toxic to the environment. Probably worse than, 100 years of drilling oil. But they're unwilling to look at that. Even the solar panels, there's a lot of bad stuff that's created, byproducts is what I was trying to say, that are created when they build solar panels, when they build batteries, when they do this stuff. So I don't believe that until we have a natural good battery that's 100%, recyclable or something like that, that won't hurt the earth, and we don't have to mine lithium for it. Until that happens, I don't believe electric is a viable option. And not only that, the way they're going about it is going to cripple us for years. This is not an unintended consequence of Biden's energy policy. This is the plan. If you remember years ago when Barack Obama was president, he said, under my energy plan, your energy prices will necessarily skyrocket. The whole point of that is if you can't afford to buy it, then you won't, right? I mean, if you can't afford to go visit your relatives in the next state over because gasoline is too expensive, then that will cut down on the amount of fuel that's used, right? I mean, it is logical. It does make sense. The problem is that the American people didn't sign up for this. They don't talk about the real problems. They don't talk about the domino effect that it has when they're playing with these pieces like this and manipulating oil prices so that they will necessarily skyrocket. When they're doing this, it's adding cost to every other step along the way. So this guy here, he needs to get his gadgets delivered so that he can assemble them, and build the perfect widget or whatever it is, right? Well, he has to pay more for that material to be, so he's not going to pay more. He's going to charge more when he sells it on the back end. It's the same argument for you. The reason why we don't want to have $15 an hour unemployment is because it will cost you $15 for a cheeseburger and fries at McDonald's rather than $4 or $5 what it costs now. So it's common sense to the point of, come on, duh, McFly, come on, get with it. But the American people aren't with it. And why aren't they with it? Why don't they see this common sense stuff? Well, it's because they've been brainwashed by projects like Operation Mockingbird for years and years. And that ties into MK Ultra and MK Naomi and all these other CIA black ops that they've been running. And I am no fan. If you've watched my channel long enough, I am no fan of the CIA. They were originally set up to be, a spy agency against foreign nations. They weren't supposed to be operating here in the United States, but somehow or another, they always seem to end up, functioning right here in the United States of America. I just saw a story earlier that they've been collecting all this data on people. Oh, it was accidental. It was because maybe somebody had a contact with a foreign agent or something like that was on our list. So we just so happened to be collecting all this data on them for decades and decades. They're not supposed to be doing that. That should be illegal. Hopefully, Congress will do its job and make sure that sort of stuff stops and make sure that people get punished for that action. But, they won't. They won't. If you're certain, if you're the CIA or if you're Hillary Clinton or anybody that has a D by their name, they're allowed to basically do anything they want, including up to committing murder. And they get away with it. But if you got an R by your name, you better not squeak out a fart or else it's going to be broadcast all over the place. My wife pointed out something earlier, and I haven't actually seen the video, but, she's my wife, so I believe her that she saw it. And she was telling me she watched a video where Biden back in the 80s was actually openly dropping the N-word, talking about a mayor and stuff like this over and over and over. And yet, here's the media going after Joe Rogan for saying it out. They're putting these compilations together of him saying it out of context. They're not leaving, talking about how Richard Pryor actually had a show that used the N-word in the title, and he was describing that. They don't bother showing you the context. They've been doing this for years and years. That's why the people on the left are so brainwashed, is they don't bother looking up the context. They don't care. They just go into mode and start screaming at the sky and stuff, right? That's what they do. They have zero debate skills. They're basically grown-ass babies throwing a temper tantrum. That's what it is. Every time you try to debate with one of these people, they will throw a temper tantrum, storm off, think you're the most evil person in the world because you don't want to give away everything and tear everything down so that they can build their socialist, communist utopia. No thanks. I prefer America as founded. I mean, the answer to the question is, more than likely we're not going to make it to 2024 if things keep going the way they're going. It's pretty hard to imagine that we can pull out of this thing. We're in a nosedive right now. If you want an analogy, we're in a nosedive. We've got no engines. One of our engines is on fire. There's a possibility that we could actually put that fire out and get the other engine going, but we're going to have to win the midterms for sure. Not sure how that's going to go. Based on what I saw last time around, I'm not very optimistic. I'm very skeptical about how it's going to turn out next time around. So, I mean, I hope for the best. I hope that, we can win back the Senate and the House, and we can actually put the brakes on a lot of this stuff that Biden is doing. My problem with that is I've seen so many Republicans over the years, when the Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the presidency, they'll blow it. They'll not do what they need to do to get the job done, to put the stop on this stuff. I mean, a great example of that is Obamacare. They could have stopped it under Trump. Had a Republican House, had a Republican Senate, and a president in the office, and he wanted to stop it. But guess what? The rhinos didn't want to stop it. So it's not only the Democrats that are the problem. Maybe even a bigger problem are people like Mitt Romney, Liz Cheney, other rhinos, all the rhinos in the group. You know who they are. Especially if you're in that, if they're your senator or representative for your state, you're going to know more about them. So please, guys, go out and do your homework. Find out, do you have rhinos in your own state? I know we got a couple here, and I'm going to support the other guy. I don't care if he's a dog catcher. I'm going to support the other guy. Because we need liberty-minded people in office. We need people to pull us out of this nosedive. And until those people are in place, we're going to continue falling and watching the dominoes fall all around us. Be more self-reliant. That's really the only answer to protect yourself from the collapse of everything, because that's what we're witnessing. As always, guys, I appreciate you tuning in, sticking with the channel. Hit the thumbs up if you like it. Share, please, if you want this information to get out there. And until then, we'll see you next time.